William Miles and Brooke Cranshaw came up with implementing crime prevention through environmental design on these two vacant lots. And so this is an evidence-based practice. Essentially, instead of putting up a 6-foot fence and saying stay out, because you see that a lot in the inner city, they'll just put up a fence around a vacant lot, right? And now it's an eyesore. Nobody can use it. You know, it's detrimental other than keeping people out. And so there's another idea of creating pocket parks and creating community gardens and, you know, doing some landscaping to make the space, to beautifying the space. Right. And so that's what we did. We created an epicenter of health and wellness versus just a stay out sign. And so reconnecting this community and allowing this community to have access to a space to learn, right? A safe space as well. We have reduced crime where we are located, and not because we policed the problem away. You can't police the problem away. Right. You need to engage people. You need to give people ownership of space. And so land justice is also a big part of our mission, and something that we talk about because who owns the land, right?
I'm Sharmon.
I'm Katie.
And this is Unpacking Ethical,
a podcast where we sip our favorite drinks at the moment
and talk about some things.
Because there's nothing ethical about upholding the status quo.
Let's talk about it.
This week on Unpacking Ethical.
Hey, this is Sharmon, and I'm here with Katie and two other amazing people that we're going to be talking about community gardens and urban farming. And I forgot to tell you, but yeah, this is another episode of Unpacking Ethical.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be a super interesting one. We're probably going to do things a little different. I know we usually talk about what we drinking, but we've got our two guests are we got one on the road, one on vacation. So, Katie, I'm going to go ahead and ask you what you drinking, and then we're going to keep it moving.
I will share what I'm drinking. I'm drinking peppermint tea. It's hot, but it's still so soothing.
You know what? So I have to tell you something because... Okay, Alma is the name of the business, but she was talking about how she doesn't drink anything cold in the summer, like even though it's hot. But I was telling you, this is a common thing in like South Asia, where they drink warm things, and that like ignites their body's like cooling systems. And I'm like, so I don't know where this came from that you have to drink cold stuff, and because like people who live in like super hot climates drink hot things in the summer in order to stay cool. So look, you on it, you got it. It's all right.
I love it. It makes me feel good. 2 cups of tea a day keeps the doctor away. That's what I say. I love tea, all sorts of teas, but peppermint is my favorite. I had a lemon balm plant for a while, and I would just go outside and pluck leaves from it and steep them in warm water and drink it that way, and that was real fun.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. I might try that. Me, on the other hand, am going Western style with a cold drink.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's fine.
And I got myself a little Izzy today because, I don't know.
Izzies are fun. They're bubbly. They taste good.
They are. I just like that it's just carbonated fruit juice. Makes me feel important. I don't know why. I'm like, I'm special. My fruit juice is carbonated.
But Steven's not drinking because he's on the road. But
yes,
what would you be drinking if you were seated in a relaxing space right now? What would be your drink of choice?
Well, in the mornings I do a detox tea. It has a whole bunch of different herbs in it. It's caffeine free. And then just recently I had a little green juice. So I like to do juices and smoothies sort of in the day, midday. It had, I think, some lime, some cayenne pepper. I think it had some cucumber, kale, maybe some apple and pear. So it was pretty good, nice and hydrating. And I'm probably about to go get a coconut water. I try to, drink as much natural stuff as possible. So coconut water is nice and hydrating, a little bit of sugar as well.
Yeah.
Do you have a
Nice.
So very,
specific
very
brand
similar.
that you like for coconut water? Because I
Um,
waffle.
you know, if you know, if there was no issues, like if I could just make a wish, I like actually drinking it straight from the coconut itself. And you can get those at like Central Market and Whole Foods, but I do drink the Central Market brand. It seems to be
Mm,
okay. Vita Coco is another one that I drink. Those are probably the top two, I'd say.
I like it. I
I
like
like the
it.
Vita one too. Yeah.
I want to start drinking. I'm like I've had coconut straight from the or coconut water straight from the coconut like one time, and I did not enjoy that. So
Oh no, I feel like it's almost carbonated. It's like a little bit of a bubbliness to it.
you know what?
Uh,
You might have had it better because I had it while I was in Thailand, like on this tour, like this
uh,
riverboat tour. And I think
yeah,
Hmm.
you
yeah.
know they got tourists and they don't know nothing. We gonna give them like the unripe coconut, and we give them and they gonna love it, and because it's
yeah.
an experience, right?
Well, some people say
Oh.
that it's a little bit of an acquired taste, because there can be a staleness to them if you don't get like fresh ones.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm.
I love it. It's just so good. But
I had a fresh
try the Central
coconut in
Market brand.
Jamaica and it was really nice. And he cut
Mhm.
it open right there in front of us. It was amazing. Kenya is ready to join us, I think. I saw you carrying your mug. What's in your mug?
Yeah, thank you all for your patience. There was a neighbor who was giving us books for my child, and I'm like, okay, it's just a wild morning. It's very sweet. So I am in a very beautiful mug. I did not know who made this mug, but it's
Ooh,
very
that
nice.
is
I
nice.
thought that it's to be the one to get. I'm having just an English breakfast with a little bit of whole milk and yeah, just some spices because I had a little bit of chai early in the morning.
I like it.
Despite being on another coast, I still woke up at 6 a.m. So, just something warm. I like warm things in the morning. I do have like a green smoothie that I kind of traditionally will have every day, but have also been enjoying like, yeah, tea. Tea is like the thing for the morning.
Love that mug.
Yeah, it's
That is
beautiful.
really nice.
They
Was it like
they
hand done? Do you think?
I have to ask, but yeah, this is where yeah, it looks like someone handmade it. One of my friends actually might have made it, to be honest. They're very like, they're science based, practitioners and cultural social sciences, but also like super creative.
Mhm.
So one of them could likely have made it.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the best friends to have. I have
Yeah.
decided because I'm one
Yeah.
of those. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Friends who make
Creative.
stuff.
And there's like science based club too. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a really wonderful balance for sure.
And you
yeah,
need to
Steven is out in the sun, in the heat, in the hot, and I feel like your shirt is like gonna kick this all off.
Michigan Urban Farming Initiative. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I went to Detroit last summer. I try to travel the country to see different approaches to urban agriculture. There's a ton of different cities who are doing good work, and Detroit is one of those. So I went to go visit. I think it's the Eastern Market. Um, Mufi is sort of touted as one of the first agri-hoods, I guess, in this modern urban ag era. I think in 2007, the last major food grocery store moved out of the city during the economic downturn. And so a lot of communities were able to start urban farming or went deeper into urban farming. I think I forget the exact name of it, but there's like a Black Land Trust and African American farming group. I mean, there's just a ton of groups out there that are doing really good work. And
Hmm.
so I got this shirt when I visited them. But yeah, I'm out at Gardopia. I'm at the gas station getting my coconut water in Topo Chico right now. And,
Nice.
Gardopia uses the models that are around the country to create
Mhm.
best practices, here in San Antonio.
So why
I
don't
love
you,
that.
yeah, like tell us what those models are and like how Gardopia got started.
Yeah, so I studied biochemistry for my undergraduate, and I became very aware of the health crisis that we were having. San Antonio was listed as one of the most obese cities in the nation. You know, South Texas, of course, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, we have the highest percentages of Black and brown people and impoverished communities, and we don't have access or the resources to have all the healthiest options. And so when I became aware of that, I was like, we have to do something about that. And that's when I started to figure out that the majority of people could be healthy if they had access to healthier options and if we were more physically active. And so how do you get people to do that? You know, not everybody wants to go to the gym. Not everybody wants to, you know, eat a salad, right? And so I found that gardening was a great way to bring those things together in a productive, enjoyable manner. You know, you're getting outside, you're connecting to nature, you're meeting community members, you are getting the fruits of your labor, right? You go to the gym, you may not see, you know, immediate results. Same thing in the garden. You're not going to see immediate results. It takes time, but it seems to be a worthwhile effort for a lot of people. And so I started a community garden at my university. And then, you know, you're sort of in a bubble in these universities, especially these private institutions. And so I knew that I needed to serve my community. And I talked to my professors about going out and serving my neighborhood, my community. And so they connected me to the Eastside Promise neighborhood, which is an initiative, the United Way, to President Obama had designated promise zones in San Antonio and LA, a couple of reservations, Kansas City. And essentially these promise zones gave nonprofits extra points to apply for federal grants. And so the city of San Antonio, United Way, Trinity, San Antonio Housing Authority applied for a grant. I think they got $52 million, $26 million for housing and $26 million for education. And that was a 5-year grant between 2012 to 2017. And so the stars sort of aligned for us to continue this work on the East Side. So they had different metrics. And one of those metrics was access to fresh produce and consumption of fresh produce. And so they did different strategies, but one of the strategies that they invested in a few thousand was youth educational gardens. And so we started a garden at the Ella Austin Community Center, serving the youth in the community. And then, you know, a couple of years down the line, I started working with schools. And in 2015, Gardopia was founded. We were founded to address the obesity epidemic that was being plaguing the it still plagues the United States to this day, in addition to the climate crisis and environmental degradation. And so we're here on the East Side. I can show you my camera real quick. I'm in our nutrition kitchen, but you can see outside, that is our garden space. And I can give you a little bit more of a tour afterwards.
Is that like a palm tree though? Is that a palm tree?
That is a banana tree right there.
Bananas.
This is our outdoor classroom space. We got Ricky just harvested like 20-30 pounds of grapes.
Oh my gosh, look at those.
We have chickens, so we have about 12 or 13 chickens. We got Dominic, our COO, is putting in a misting system for them because it's super hot right now. We have a greenhouse nursery area. We're starting a garden shop. We have an aquaponics system that we're getting started. So we have some koi right there. You can see little orange dots as well. And so yeah, we're on a half acre. We partnered with the San Antonio Housing Authority to reduce crime on this lot. This was one of the highest crime intersections in the city in 2015. You know, unfortunately, a young man was shot and killed after the MLK March here in 2015. And so they got a grant to reduce crime. And of course, they did different strategies. They did more police officers. They did a shot spotter technology where they could track a gunshot. They did drug raids, of course, but somebody had the crazy idea of doing crime prevention through environmental design. And so essentially they helped negotiate a land use agreement between us and the owner to start a community garden. And so that's how we got to this little slice of heaven here on the east side. And to this day, we have different programs that we implement to address the issues of health and environmental degradation through education. So we work with schools, churches, community centers, restaurants, residences. I took the model of goodwill. A lot of nonprofits will be out of luck if all the grants and donations run out. So we wanted to be financially sustainable without grants and donations. So we provide services, we provide education, academic curriculum. We also build gardens for people. We have a farmer's market, and we have a garden media program. So we have a podcast, a magazine, and a YouTube channel.
That is awesome. You said a lot that needs to be unpacked in there, especially regarding like the impact in communities. But we're gonna like circle back to that. I'm gonna let Kenya tell us about Bluelight Junction because she has a really interesting take on the whole urban farming community garden thing, and we're gonna come back to that though.
Yeah, I got a pin. I got a pin on the crime thing too because I really want to unpack that.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I will go in and out of having a mask on just because I have a communal house I'm in right now. But so let me know if you cannot hear me as I'm speaking. So part of my work, I started an organization called Bluelight Junction in January of 2020. So we are definitely new and kind of in our early stages of our work, but I was a part of a project called the Baltimore Natural Dye Initiative through many different community governmental organizations. So the Department of Housing and Community Development, Maryland State Arts Council, the First Lady of the State of Maryland, Yumi Hogan, so the governor, the Department of Commerce, and then in partnership curricularly with the Maryland Institute College of Art. And so I had just recently moved back east and became a part of that initiative as a early on as a resident artist through the Maryland Institute College of Art. So I'm a natural dyer, textile artist. And so my work has been in teaching those practices for the last, at the time it was 8 years. So to date, it's been about 12. And so it was exciting to have an opportunity to move someplace really like my family is in the Virginia, DC, like Prince George's County area, but I had never lived in Baltimore. And so to be able to come to the city and to have an opportunity to do that work, to be funded, was really amazing. And so that project was 18 months. And then as that project started to sort of turn through its like 9-month mark, I really just was looking at what the impact had been for all of us. And then again, thinking about how academia can keep things exclusive. And so myself and my co-collaborator and the other artist in residence, Rosa Chang, and I had started a dye garden. So we had a community garden where I lived, and she and I came up with the idea through our residency to start looking at all of these plants as we were looking through culture and tradition on the university level. And that scope of work for us was really personal and just about like what we were interested in focusing on. But the impacts were really long because we got to bring in community, we got to bring in a number of students who are in Baltimore City, but also students who were at different colleges. And that was just really generative in a way that we hadn't expected. We were just really thinking about curiosity and didn't expect that so many others would be curious. And so as we continued that garden, so the garden is Hidden Harvest. There's one side that's like chickens and an orchard and vegetables. And then we, in the open lot, started this dye garden just with a couple rows of plants. Indigo was one that was really significant, but native species And then also looking at different historical dyes, really, and fiber as well. I was really interested in cotton, like growing nicotiana, so the tobacco, and thinking about those relationships historically. So we were doing that. And then the opportunity came up that the building next to the garden was available. And so really that's the nexus of the Bluelight Junction story, is that that space became available. And I just felt like a greater calling to continue the work. And so through that, I took on the space, and I say we a lot because my intention and the work that I do has been collaborative. There has been a lot of sort of personal money spent to support the studio, but also energetically, like I couldn't do it without so many other people. And the intention is for the space to grow into a cooperative space, so that it's really a hub for cultural understanding, preservation, and tradition. We also process the plants that we're working with. So in 2020, we started this like experiment of growing in community with other urban farms. So once I came into Baltimore, the city has just a prolific amount of urban farms. And so I felt really honored that people like let us in into the space, with ease and grace. And so there was a farm at the time called Cherry Hill Urban Farm, Chug, which is under Black Yield Institute, which is run by Servant Director Eric Jackson. And so Eric and I had this sort of relationship and this conversation around like, what if we grew just collectively, and what would that look like for our work to be outside of just one part of the city, go to South Baltimore, to have things that could be more connected to their community. So we started growing with Chug in 2020. And then we built a partnership with an organization called Innovation Works, which focuses on entrepreneurship, makers, and allowing businesses to thrive in Baltimore City, really reconnecting resources to community, growing businesses and jobs and things like that. And so Innovation Works then allowed for us to do consulting through they had received a grant to look at natural dyes in like the ecosystem of Baltimore. And so we came in, did consulting for them, and then established another 4 farms that we got funding to support. And once we did that, then we were in Northeast Baltimore, we were in West Baltimore, we were in South Baltimore, we were in Central Baltimore. And so this season 22 is our second season growing. The project is called Nature's Colors Initiative, and we're in our second season with them. And we're now in 6 farms. And so really looking at the impact of growing in collaboration and in collectivism, and thinking about building and growing a greater cooperative of dye farmers, people who are growing dye plants, to really think about like the historical aspect of a lot of these plants, indigo being one of the 5 cash crops that were cultivated during the transatlantic slave trade. Right. And also like reestablishing relationships. Like I started growing cotton. We had this community of students come and ask me from a place called the African Diaspora Alliance, like how did growing cotton, like how did that feel for you? And I said, it was a relationship I didn't know that I needed to be reconnected to. And so it really helped me to understand that like, not only were people colonized, plants were colonized. And so disconnecting us from one another is also a form of colonialism, and how these systems can continue to perpetuate, right? So if you're traumatized by growing food, you're not growing food, If you're traumatized by growing plants or medicine, you're not growing it anymore. And so you're essentially eroding your history, your health, your future, your stories, all these things. So really just like understanding how reconnecting to nature first helps me reconnect to myself, my history, all of the things that preceded me, all of the things that are to come, what I can pass on to my child.
Okay, you two are giving us so much.
I got some questions.
Girl, ask your questions because I'm like, I don't even
Because
know
I want to
where to
dive
like
right in. I want to dive right into a couple of things. There are questions, but let me just make the statements first. Because I think we all can agree that reconnecting to land has been kind of a central theme in the healing of our relationships, but specifically Black people, Black Americans. Our relationships with each other and with nature as well. But I've been thinking about like Stephen and also Kenya, y'all brought up two things that made me think about why this is so important. And I say reconnecting, and I try to be delicate with the language that I use because while, I may not personally know as much about, growing things and stuff, I can take the responsibility and say, well, I'm going to heal this relationship, but not everyone has access to that and not everyone's at that place. And that was by design. The systems that were created were designed to separate us from that. And so I wanted to like note that, but also talking about the crime on the east side of San Antonio. And I think, Stephen, you mentioned that there was, I think, kind of a movement to increase policing in the community. I think you might have said something like that, but instead it sounds like y'all decided that wasn't the direction, or somebody else decided that, hey, we probably should do something that's community based and centered where people have access to food, but not only food, but access to like the soil and reconnecting with the plants and the land around them, as opposed to like, let's just add more police. And I'm just wondering if that, my question is for you first, but I'm sure Kenya will probably have something to comment on with this, but like, do you feel that is probably the better, more in alignment route to go, is to say, hey, let's just make sure that we have access, that people have access to things that they've been separated from first?
As you were saying, the east side of San Antonio has been divested in. It's no different than any other impoverished neighborhood, whether you're in Miami or Baltimore or New York or LA, right? Like, these issues aren't specific to San Antonio. You see them all over the country and all over the world. And so the San Antonio Housing Authority received this grant to reduce crime along these intersections of New Braunfels, Gevers, Walters. These are sort of the main corridors of the East Side, which is a historically African-American community. And so they did those other approaches. They did have more street cops. Again, I'm sure they did more detective work for drug raids. They did a shot spotter technology where they could track a gunshot in 1 mile radius to a pinpoint. But aside from
terrifying. Sorry.
Yeah, no, definitely. William Miles and Brooke Cranshaw came up with implementing crime prevention through environmental design on these two vacant lots. And so this is an evidence-based practice. Essentially, instead of putting up a 6-foot fence and saying stay out, because you see that a lot in the inner city, they'll just put up a fence around a vacant lot, right? And now it's an eyesore. Nobody can use it. It's detrimental, other than keeping people out. And so there's another idea of creating pocket parks and creating community gardens and, doing some landscaping to make the space, to beautifying the space. Right. And so that's what we did. We created an epicenter of health and wellness versus just a stay out sign. And so reconnecting this community and allowing this community to have access to a space to learn, right? A safe space as well. We have reduced crime where we are located, and not because we policed the problem away. You can't police the problem away. Right. You need to engage people. You need to give people ownership of space. And so land justice is also a big part of our mission, and something that we talk about because who owns the land, right? Over 97% of Texas is privately owned. And I want to say 92% of farmland in America is owned by European Americans. Right. And most farmers are elderly white males, right? Who, for one reason or another, are farming. And so I think close to 90% of African-American land was lost between 1910 to 1997, which is estimated to be in the $4 to $13 billion range. So there's a lot of issues around who has access to land, who owns the land, the quality of the land. And so these are some things that we're trying to address. And this is a prototype, right? If we can do this here, we could do it anywhere. Ron Finley is one of the more popular urban farmers in Los Angeles, who talks about the city of Los Angeles owning, 1,000 square miles of land. And the city of San Antonio owns quite a bit of land too. So that's where I think land trusts and opportunities to look at reparations through land is something that every municipality can and should do.
Right. I agree 100%.
Yes.
And I just,
yeah, I was just kind of thinking about you talking about like the fencing around vacant lots. And I'm like, we talk a lot about the physical aspect of being disconnected from our past and from land in that sense. And we don't necessarily think about the psychological ramifications of having nothing, like literally nothing, like you said, just an eyesore being cut off from you and being like, you're not good enough to like be in this space. Like this nothingness is like cut off from you. And I'm like, that does something to a mind. You know what I mean?
It does.
To see nothing, that you can't get to nothing. And
right.
Like, okay, wait a minute. Like
nothing's happening, right? It's just sitting there, and you see it, block after block, neighborhood after neighborhood. And so there's so many opportunities to create green spaces for a community, because again, in a lot of these neighborhoods, the yards are small. If you may be living in apartments, so you don't have access to nature. You can't just go walk in the backyard and take your shoes off and go walk in the grass and go harvest something.
It was such an interesting point, because we're all it sounds like we're on this theme of like reclaiming, reconnecting, and healing. And you brought up land justice, Stephen, and I wanted Kenya, how these ideas I feel like intersect is when you talked about healing that relationship that with cotton specifically, or are these crops that, because as soon as you started talking about it, I was thinking like to myself how traumatic that could be. How do you go about like convincing people that it's okay to be open to that sort of healing process?
I mean, I think all of those are great questions or great things to like, wonder about, but we can't really know like what helps someone, because what helps me may not help you.
Right.
But I do know that examples are more impactful. So if I have an example of having a strong, positive relationship with something or someone, that will offer someone the opportunity to be more curious or to be more interested or to be more engaged in something, rather than like being in a dance of negativity or something that doesn't feel possible or generating a healthy engagement. And so I think so by people seeing me, so there's a lot of things that I was even just kind of talking about it with friends this morning, like I'm a person of color, I'm Black, I am a woman, I'm all these things. But in the context of like how I present our work, my goal is really to think about all people, and to think about all of the things that we all have brought to the work. And so there's a really strong desire on my part to really look at like cultures that are indigenous, cultures that are Latinx, cultures that are, Asian, that have a very specific relationship to Baltimore. And, and then there are people who are white who have a lot to offer as well. So I really feel like even just thinking about those things in context of like how to show people that you can have a healthy relationship to multiple communities, right? Like I don't have to just go on the basis of color. So like that's a healing too. And so if I'm expecting to be able to live comfortably in that space, I have to show that by example. I am by all sort of like presence, like Black, as I like to say, and I have all the things that, are important to me culturally. I grew up in a Black city. I grew up with Black mayors. I grew up with Black politicians, right? But I need to learn how to be engaged in other relationships. So my travels are the things that brought me that. So if I can, again, like the plant thing I'm using as a pivot also to say, like, there are all of these ways that we can heal these systems that have created divisions between us, and that's division from myself, that's division from the earth, that's division from other humans. And so I think just by example is how I feel like it's best to sort of engage people in greater like earth practice, in greater human practice, right?
Oh yeah.
All of these things I think are how I do that work. And that I let the chips fall where they may, it's not really for me to decide. Like I've even said to people like, because funders are like, what's the impact of how many volunteers have you had? What's the impact of whatever? And I'm like, listen, I don't get to decide if somebody goes home and starts like composting and uses like, less shower water, right? But by being here and having some opening and awareness, like something will shift for you in your life. And that's up to you. Like, I don't need to shame you or to force you to think away or to like, we're just here for that opportunity, right? For you to think a little bit differently, for you to dream a little bit differently. And it's up to you how it moves you,
I kind of want to get a little bit from both of you on, I guess maybe I'll just leave it open instead of asking a specific question. I was like, I had a specific question, but maybe I just want to leave it open. And just what do you want to leave us with, or just like leave the audience with as far as anything and everything we've talked about?
I think one, I'm really grateful to get to know more about Stephen's work and the work I don't, I think I've been to Texas twice. And I don't have a relationship or understanding of that work. And I also am like a de facto urban farmer, like I am farming is what I like to say. I don't consider myself a farmer.
Right.
Because, people are out here doing stuff. And I'm like, let me not just dishonor that with my growing capacities. But yeah, I definitely having more understanding of like the work that is happening and like, bringing up Ron Finley and just like all of the knowledge that people have poured into this, I think is profound, and we need a place that synergizes all of those things. And I know people have been doing that work. My best friend is one of those people, started a community garden in the Lower 9 after Katrina. And the Backyard Gardeners Network, and really just thinking about like how I've watched all of the work she's done and those community of folks grow. And so I think what I want to leave with people is also just the offering that like there is more to know about ourselves through plant access, through plant experiences, and it shouldn't be again, a barrier. Like I've heard people say, oh, I don't want to grow flowers. That's like some white people stuff, or that's not for us, or, and do you know how I've been like literally getting a bouquet of flowers since I was 20, every week. And that's an impact to my life. It gives me like a connection to something beautiful and sweet, and like the color and the ability for nature to just blossom in a certain way allows me to understand more about myself. So I think that like there are more ways and plants and life to investigate in that, and we could, I'm sure Stephen could go into it, but like, let's not talk about mushrooms, like there's so many things that really, I think are important and small for us to really be, compelled by in life, and that I really want to see more wild gardens in the city, that I want to see more integrated places where I can be walking through my neighborhood to another main street and I see a waterfall or like up an estuary of, like life, and that it shouldn't just be for people who are in obviously like communities that have resources or in places that are distant and far, So just wanting to bring that, back into the cities, I think, and reconnecting, and how important it is for all of us to do.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's same thing. I'm so happy y'all brought us together. I've heard a little bit about Baltimore, but now I need to go visit you, Kenya. I follow a couple of farmers out in Baltimore who are doing like an agri-hood out there. And so, again, I just want to continue to learn from all these resources that we have in this nation and really around the world, right? America has been disconnected from our food systems. We are overfed but malnourished. And so with my background in nutrition and biochemistry, and I became an urban farmer, I think that's the way to be the healthiest as possible. And so, health is one of the few things we have. I tell people you can take away, my clothes, my car, my house, but you can't take away my body unless you kill me. And so how do we protect our bodies and make them the systems that they were created to be, and with that's genetically embedded in all of us? And so health is really key, because it doesn't matter how much money you get. Even the most wealthiest people have to pay a lot of money for their health, right? For a heart transplant, for a lung transplant, for a kidney transplant. And we've been tricked. We've been tricked through processed foods. It's called the standard American diet, which is very sad. And therefore, we're eating highly processed carbohydrates, sugars, salts, saturated fats, and it is killing us. It's a slow death is what happens, and our quality of life slowly decreases over time, and we become reliant upon the medical system through pharmaceuticals to maintain somewhat homeostasis. And so I'm just really passionate about taking care of our vessels, and I'm still learning and doing my best to do that, but I still have room for improvement, as we all do. Something else is remembering how I got into this, because a lot of people are like, oh, this is all hippy dippy, like whatever, and there's been a misnomer and negative connotations that have been created around these words that we use. But overall, I was doing this to be healthy because I was an athlete, right? I was playing football, track, basketball in high school, and then I was a track athlete in college as well. And so, whether you do it from the environmental side, whether you do it from the health side, whether you do it from the economic side, whether you do it from the community sector, it doesn't really matter. We all eat food, and that's the common denominator that we have. And so if we realize this common denominator and we can create these food systems that are circular economies that create wealth within our communities, I think that we can move towards a more sustainable planet. And the United Nations is saying it, local municipalities are saying it, but how do you go from saying it to doing it? And that's what we're trying to prove out here in San Antonio.
I feel like we need a part 2, because there's still a lot to unpack.
I know
Yes.
there is still so much. We might have to circle back. We're gonna have to circle back. But in the meantime, can you tell the people where they can find you?
Thank you both for bringing us together and for facilitating a really, I think, necessary but also just easy conversation. And so we are Bluelight Junction, blue.light junction at IG and bluelightjunction.com. I'm also an artist. And so I have my own IG, Traveling Miles Studio, on Instagram. And you can find us in Central Baltimore in Greenmount West, harvesting, processing, planting, growing, and just being in community at Hidden Harvest Farm.
You can definitely find Gardopia on the interweb. At Gardopia Gardens is our hashtags our handles on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can go to our website too. It's gardopiagardens.org. Like I said earlier, we have a YouTube channel. We have Gardopia Gardens, and we have a series called Organic Gardening 101. So you can visit us if you're here in San Antonio, Texas, 619 North New Braunfels. We're on the near Eastside, close to downtown. And, again, please reach out, Sharmon and Katie and Kenya. Definitely looking forward to keeping this conversation going.
Yeah. Yes. Are you guys still doing classes at the Pearl?
On second Saturdays. So we took off for the summer, July. We might be back in August, but for sure September. You can see us on second Saturdays at 10 o'clock with Compost Queens.
Oh, that's right. Okay, nice.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank y'all. I'm about to go get in this sun.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening and or watching. Unpacking Ethical is an independent video podcast hosted by the Ethical Network of San Antonio. Your co-hosts are Sharmon, Lebby, and Katie, and we thank you for tuning in. Please follow us on Instagram and our YouTube channel, and hey, leave a review wherever you're listening.